Vikings insider Kevin Seifert, who is working with ESPN, dropped some big time reports on the Minnesota Vikings and their plans for the offseason. And we're going to start off here talking about what he had to say on the Vikings quarterback position. And this is coming straight from Kevin, saying the best way to put this, based on what sources have said, is all bets are off. The general manager who drafted McCarthy, number 10 in 2024, has been fired. And the coach who was in full agreement with that decision is now under considerably more scrutiny. In the big picture, McCarthy is a talented player who just turned 23 and has a total of 10 NFL starts. Few NFL teams would give up on a quarterback with that profile, and many team builders are particularly enamored with optimizing a quarterback's rookie contract. Adofo-Mensah was one of them, but his departure is a reminder of the range of outcomes that approach can lead to. If anything, these events increase the chances that the Vikings will take a big swing at finding a veteran quarterback who can start in 2026. The only thing more damaging than making the mistakes the Vikings made last season would be to repeat them this year. All signs are pointing to J.J. McCarthy not being the quarterback next season in Minnesota. And honestly, each and every day, each and every report we get, it looks more and more likely, or unlikely, that J.J. McCarthy will be QB1. And for exactly what Kevin was saying, the Vikings can't repeat the same mistake they made last offseason. Now, I thought last offseason they could have just signed a high-end veteran backup like a Joe Flacco or a Gardner Minshew, for example. But I think now this offseason, I don't think that's enough. Like, are you just going to roll in the training camp with Flacco, McCarthy, and say that's our quarterback room? I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there would be a serious upgrade made at the quarterback position, whether it's a Kyler Murray, a Malik Willis, a Geno Smith. Like, some serious competition will be brought in, and not just a veteran backup quarterback mold, because in my opinion, that's not enough. Now, we'll dive into more reports coming from Kevin Seifert, but our bosses challenged us to pick up 50 subscribers on today's show. If you guys want to help me out and help me look good for my bosses and maybe help me avoid an awkward meeting with them, go down there and hit that subscribe button today. Daily videos around your Minnesota Vikings. So hit that sub button today and help us reach 70,000 subs here on YouTube. Now, I always wanted to kick it back to this quote that Kevin O'Connell had before last season, and it kind of lives in infamy right now in the Vikings fan base, and this is probably his most popular quote he's ever had. It went viral, and he said, "Organizations fail young quarterbacks more than quarterbacks fail organizations." I think this is pretty telling considering the situation the Vikings are in, and it gets me to this. I feel bad for J.J. McCarthy. Like, the Vikings, I'm not saying they set him up to fail this past season, because the Vikings have a great support system. Like, even though I had my gripes with Kevin O'Connell, he's still a top 15 offensive mind in the NFL. You still had Jefferson, you still had Addison, you had good weapons around McCarthy. So, like, I feel bad for him that it didn't work out. And the main reason I feel bad is just the pressure they put this kid under. They understood he was coming off a torn meniscus. The Vikings team was coming off a 14-win season where their quarterback, Sam Darnold, just threw for 35 touchdowns. He led them. He was a catalyst on why the Vikings won 14 games this past season. So they put all this pressure on J.J. McCarthy. He was obviously supposed to have a kid week 2 of the season. He got hurt again. He didn't play good in that Falcons game. And I just feel bad for where J.J. McCarthy was kind of thrown into. That's a lot of pressure on a 22-year-old kid at the time. But again, it's the NFL. It's reality. It's not like J.J. was thrown into like a Titans or a Saints situation where he had nothing to work with. Like, he still had Jefferson, still had a good offensive-minded head coach. So I'm kind of got mixed feelings on this, but I just always look back at that quote from Kevin O'Connell. Very, very interesting that he said that, considering how this past season played out. But Kevin Seifert was also talking about KOC, and there's a lot of question marks on really how good of a head coach Kevin O'Connell is. At least in my opinion, I think probably the most critical Vikings content creator on KOC. But Seifert had this to say, saying it would be wrong to put O'Connell on the so-called hot seat. I disagree, but the Vikings are tied for the NFL's 5th best regular season winning percentage since his arrival in 2022, and he is under contract for another 4 seasons. For O'Connell, though Adofo-Mensah's departure is best viewed as equal parts liberating and cautionary, to the extent that Adofo-Mensah's performance was below standard, O'Connell would benefit from better team-building decisions. But it also removes a mitigating factor in the Vikings' failure to win a playoff game during O'Connell's tenure. This transition fairly shifts that responsibility to O'Connell's shoulders moving forward. So, and he also said in the short term, Brzezinski will give O'Connell the steady and experienced partner he probably needed as a young coach. One way or another, that is likely to be profile of the Wilf's permanent hire. The rest will be up to O'Connell. And there's no doubt all the pressure in the world is now on KOC. And I still have doubts if KOC is a great head coach in the league. I think he's solid, but is he good? I think he's good. But there's really nothing to go off of saying, oh, Kevin O'Connell's a good head coach. You may be saying, Patrick, you're flipping your takes on KOC. And yeah, I have flipped my takes. And I think it would be concerning if you didn't flip your takes because I love being an NFL fan for the biggest reason is that games and results matter. Heading into this past season, Kevin O'Connell's stock was at an all-time high. Like what he did with Sam Darnold, Vikings winning 14 games, and you think about his past 3 seasons as the head coach, 13 wins. Kirk got hurt towards Achilles, throw that season out the window, and then he won 14 games with Sam Darnold. So like his stock was at an all-time high. But this past season, we saw Darnold go to Seattle. He won a Super Bowl, clearly proving he can be successful without Kevin O'Connell. And then KOC this past year, the offense was a disaster. I mean, the ranks this past season, the EPA per play was 28th. DVOA, 29th. They averaged 20 points a game. If you want to get labeled as a genius offensive mind, you got to do more than this. I mean, even back in 22 and 24, Vikings offense, it's not like they were world beaters. I mean, about middle of the pack in EPA and DVOA both seasons. And if the Vikings don't make the playoffs this year, it will be because of Kevin O'Connell's offense. We can all agree on that. That's not a hot take. Brian Flores and that defense will be a top 5 unit this upcoming year. You can stamp that, especially with all the reports indicating they'll probably spend a lot of their draft capital on that side of the football. Flores is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. They're top 5 last year. They've been top 5 since Flores got to Minnesota. So you can stamp that. Well, pressure now falls on the offense. It falls on Kevin O'Connell and also then gets back to if KOC knows this or if the biggest reason they don't make the playoffs will be because of his offense, makes me think that he is going to go out there, be aggressive, get a solid veteran quarterback. But again, like it's not like Kevin O'Connell's offense is like they haven't been top 10 once. Have they been top 10 in passing yards per game? They're 10th in points per game back in 2024. But like in terms of being a consistent overall offense, they haven't been top 10. They haven't been able to run the ball. The same issues we have been talking about with O'Connell for the last 4 seasons were on full display last year. Short yardage play calling, not being able to run the football. He hasn't adjusted. I think this guy right now is still one of the more overrated head coaches in the league because I think if the Vikings fired him, 20 teams would fire their head coaches the next day to try to hire him. I think that would be a little ludicrous. Like, you look at other guys like DeMeco Ryans, Mike McDonald, obviously, these other young head coaches who were hired around the same time as O'Connell, they have been way, way more successful than what KOC has been. And also KOC, he's had a genius defensive coordinator and a top 5 defense this whole time. So he needs to figure his side of the football out, or else I think he possibly will be let go. But you guys let me know. Is Kevin O'Connell on the hot seat? Give me a Y for yes. Give me an N for no. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I'll dive into more reports here in just a second. But let me tell you about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Factor Meals. Now, if you guys head to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off and plug in promo code VikingsChat50 off, we'll hook you guys up with 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 whole year. Now, if you guys want to eat better but have zero time and zero energy to make it happen, Factor doesn't ask you to meal prep or follow recipes. It just removes the entire problem. 2 minutes, real food, done. Now, Factor is already made by chefs, designed by dietitians, and delivered to your door, and you heat it for 2 minutes and eat. It's that simple. And they have over 100 rotating meals every week that include high-protein options, calorie-smart, Mediterranean, GLP-1 support, and ready-to-heat salads. I also love Factor because it's no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, and no refined seed oils. So head to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off. Plug in promo code VikingsChat50 off to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. This offer is only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualified auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. All right, so a lot of question marks now on the Vikings organization. Who really is in charge? Who's calling the shots? Who is the final say in the organization in terms of roster moves and how they're going to construct it? Well, Seifert had this to say, saying amid league-wide assumptions that Coach Kevin O'Connell is now the most prominent voice in the building, it's important to understand the expanse of Brzezinski's experience and career. Although he most recently has focused on contract negotiations and salary cap management, Brzezinski was the Vikings' top football executive for 3 seasons from 2003 to 2005 as former owner Red McCombs worked to sell the franchise. In that role, Brzezinski modernized the front office's process, administrated football decisions and managed much of the staff while working alongside Coach Mike Tice and Director of College Scouting Scott Studwell. So, the Vikings are obviously pushing off this GM search till after the NFL draft. I think we all know what's going to happen. I'm guessing they are going to just promote Brzezinski. Now, obviously, they have to follow the Rooney Rule process. They have to interview 2 minorities. So that process will pay out. But I think when it's all said and done, Brzezinski will be the GM because then you get that media push and that kind of PR narrative where it's like after the draft, after free agency, everybody's be like, oh, man, look at what the Vikings did. Brzezinski did a great job. Even if some of us feel like he didn't, that's how it will play out in Minnesota, as it always does. So I think he'll eventually get the job. But watch out for George Paton next season. Now, there's been a lot of speculation over the last couple of weeks on the Vikings potentially poaching George Paton. I don't think that would be for this upcoming season. I think it would be for next year. And Seifert also talked about it, saying this. It's striking how many leaked sources think that the Wilfs will pursue Denver Broncos general manager George Paton, who is under contract through the 2026 season, to change teams. Paton is a close friend and confidant of Spielman and worked as his top assistant not only with the Vikings from 2007 to 2020, but also with the Miami Dolphins for 5 years and the Bears for 3. And George Paton would be a home run hire. I mean, the Vikings got George Paton, and you have the infrastructure of George Paton, Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores, and Justin Jefferson. Like that big-time grouping of, leaders in the organization would be huge because Paton, guys, crushed it in Denver. I mean, he drafted Pat Surtain, number 9, Quinn Meinerz. I mean, this guy was an all-pro guard this past season in the league. He found a guy like Jonathon Cooper in the 7th round. He took Nik Bonitto, turned him into one of the better edge rushers in the league in the 2nd. Luke Wattenberg in the 5th. Marvin Mims in the 2nd round. I mean, Mims is a decent pick. Don't want to give him way too much credit for that. But like Riley Moss is a starting corner he found in the 3rd. J.L. Skinner in the 6th. Javonte Williams took him 35th. That's a decent pick. But still, he found a lot of starters so far in the draft. And I think really what makes him special is the extension that he's made. I mean, Jonathon Cooper, giving him a 4 for 60, coming off drafting him in the 7th round. That's an absolute home run by a GM. Quinn Meinerz, 4 for 80. That's a steal. Zach Allen, maybe a tad overpaid, but Zach Allen's one of the most dominant interior defensive linemen in the league. Pat Surtain, 4 for 96. That's a steal. And probably his biggest steal is Nik Bonitto on a 4-year, $106 million deal. And even a guy like Malcolm Roach, giving him an extension for 3 years, $29.25 million total. So if they got Paton, I think it would be a home run hire. I think we all agree on it. I mean, it's a shame that they were able that they let him out the door. I think this makes a lot of sense. And if he has any interest in coming back to the Vikings, again, Wilfs, I've been saying a lot on the channel this offseason, open up the checkbook, make him the GM. It gives yourself the best chance to eventually win a Super Bowl here in Minnesota. But if you guys made it to today's show, appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Hit me with those goals down below. See you guys next time. Let's go Vikes.